Hey everyone, AMR back again with another football video. So it has been a couple of days since I've uploaded on the channel. I'll give a quick update there. I did have COVID, so it really knocked me out quite a bit, and I had to take a couple days just to regain, honestly. I slept for 16 hours one day, and I've been feeling a lot better these last couple of days, so I'm happy to get back on this grind. Appreciate everyone that's followed and liking the content as always. But let's go ahead and jump into this video. So in today's episode, we're going to be covering the top 5 defenses that I think will be most impactful for fantasy football. So defenses and kickers are kind of on the out in fantasy. A lot of people are trying to get away from the types of leagues that put a lot of onus on having a good defense or kicker, and a lot of them are just replacing them entirely with another flex position, another quarterback position, etc., etc. So this may not be super beneficial for a ton of people, but if you are in a league that does value the defensive position still, then this video is going to be pretty instrumental, and it's going to tell you a lot of the underlying things that is going to make a team like the New Orleans Saints in this case very impactful. So as always, if you like the content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, post on a time. Let's go ahead and jump into this. So first up here, we have the New Orleans Saints. So the New Orleans Saints, for a lot of reasons, I think are going to be one of the better teams in the NFL. At least they're for sure probably going to end up winning their division, honestly. The only people that stand in their way is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could either do really well or really bad this year, and I'm not really sure which. They don't have Chris Godwin. They don't have Gronkowski. You got Tom Brady coming out of retirement after only really a month and a half of break, so it's not really retirement. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for the New Orleans Saints defense. So number one reason, they had the 4th fewest points allowed per game last season. That was without Tyrann Mathieu in the secondary. There's been a lot of upgrades on the defensive side of the ball that have made this defense so much more daunting. They have 25 forced turnovers last season, so that's a lot of turnovers. I think the most in the NFL was around 30 or 31. We'll see it here in a little bit, but 25 turnovers forced is definitely a good thing. They did have Tyrann Mathieu get added this offseason. So the Honey Badger is someone who has made a name for himself in the NFL. He's most notably with the Kansas City Chiefs. His time there, he was very, very good. He had one tweet a couple of years ago that was it's unbelievable that in my 2 years that I've been here, we've made it to the playoffs in the AFC Championship game and won a Super Bowl. And then the 1 year that we're having a down start, the entire Kansas City fan base starts shitting on us. So it was kind of evident that Mathieu wanted to get out of Kansas City, and it wasn't a huge surprise that he didn't reach a deal with them this offseason. Instead, he ends up going to the New Orleans Saints. I think that's actually a really good fit for him. You do have the returner of Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, and Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore is probably one of the best corners in the NFL. He is in DK Metcalf's head. That is pretty clear. And then Demario Davis, he is a fantastic talent. And then Cam Jordan, he's reaching the end of his career, honestly, but he's still very, very good. So with those 4 notable names on defense, they are going to be very challenging in that NFC South and really in the NFC altogether. So on the 5th bullet point here, half the division is rebuilding. So you have Atlanta Falcons, who is predicted to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, along with the Carolina Panthers, who are also kind of finding themselves in this territory where do we go from here? We have Christian McCaffrey, who when healthy is one of the best players in the NFL, but the problem is he's really never healthy. They don't really know who their quarterback is. They have a lot of turnover. They have a fantastic defense with Brian Burns over there, but it's not enough to propel them into the future. So for this reason alone, I think that New Orleans is going to be one of the better teams. They had 25 forced turnovers without Mathieu, and Mathieu is definitely going to be adding a few more here or there. So next up on our list, we have New England. So for whatever reason, New England has the ability to be one of the best defenses in the NFL every single season. Even in down years, their defense has really always been their their knight in shining armor, if you will. So for first off here, they finished 4th in defense last season. They had 30 forced turnovers. So we just saw that the New Orleans Saints had 25 forced turnovers. New England had 5 more than that. Here for the third bullet point, Hightower remains a free agent, so that is one of the things that is kind of one of the lingering issues that you see with New England Patriots. Deontay Hightower is one of their better players on defense. However, he is a little older now, but with that veterancy that he does bring, I feel like that is kind of invaluable, and a lot of teams really need that. You have Godshaw, Matt Judon, Jalen Mills, Devin McCourty. I mean, you have a lot of really talented people on defense that I think it does bring enough of that carryover from the previous season that we're going to see a very similar defense this season. So for the 5th bullet point, the franchise is always a contender. So even in their down years, they still are always fighting for that AFC East division. So lately the Buffalo Bills have been very, very good, and but historically I would say the Patriots have won that division the most, mostly due to having Tom Brady. But Mac Jones is set to have another good year. He's got the added talent of Devontae Parker now. They went ahead and they got another running back. They have Hunter Henry, who's going to be healthy. They have a lot of good things on the offensive side of the ball that I think that the defense will have less stress, if you will, on trying to hold the defenses as much as what they did last season. That's not to say that they're not going to. It just means that there's going to be a lot less pressure on them, which when players have less pressure, they tend to play even better. And then for our last point here, they had the second fewest points allowed last season. So not only are they forcing a lot of turnovers, but they're also giving up very, very few points. And when you're dealing with defenses, when a defense gives up points, you're getting a lot of negative points. All defenses start with 10 points, and then I think it goes like down by 3, down by like 4, down by 7, and it gets pretty negative pretty fast. And so whenever you have a defense such as New England that doesn't give up a ton of points, that is really, really what you want to target. So for this next icon here, it's kind of ugly because the Indianapolis Colts have a very odd logo, so it didn't really fit perfect in this photogram here. But we do have the Indianapolis Colts as our third team here. So in the upcoming season, the Colts have the 9th easiest schedule. That is very important when you're talking about strength of schedule and whether a defense just has an uphill battle altogether. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts are one of those teams that I think they're going to be a huge contender in the NFL for a Super Bowl this season. They have a stellar offense. They went ahead and they got that Hall of Fame quarterback this offseason. So they have the returning talent of Jonathan Taylor, who was having an MVP type run season last season. You have Michael Pittman Jr., who's returning. Paris Campbell's finally healthy-ish. We'll see if that remains to be true. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you did get some weird news that Khari Willis ended up retiring after 3 years to pursue his passion in God and stuff. So, I mean, congratulations to him and everything, but that is going to be a bit of a hit on the defensive side. They do have Rodney McLeod, so he was also an addition. They have Stephon Gilmore, I believe. So they have a ton of fantastic people on the defensive side of the ball that I'm really not worried about the loss of Khari Willis. So second bullet point here, half the division is rebuilding. You have the Houston Texans, who are kind of a wild card, if you will. Davis Mills is their starting quarterback. And although he had a very good, well, I should say a better than expected season last season, I don't know if he's going to be able to repeat. He was their quarterback out of Stanford that they chose. But I mean, the NFL is a tough league, and him being in the same division as the Titans and the Colts, that's a lot of that's 4 games guaranteed that he's pretty much going to have to really fight to win and likely will lose. So that half the division is rebuilding. You have Trevor Lawrence over on the Jaguars. And the Indianapolis Colts, I think that they are just so good at running down that clock. If you go down to our next point, they're so good at just controlling the clock and leaving their defense on the field as little as possible. Their offense is just so run heavy that by the time that the other team gets the ball, they just have pretty much decimated the entire first half or second half, what have you. So for our For our fourth bullet point here, we have they finished 10th last season in overall stats. That's super important. Looking at number 5, you have 19 interceptions, and they were the second most forced turnovers last season. If you look at our 6th bullet point, you have Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, and Stephon Gilmore. You have a lot of star power on this defense. You have a team that is very well known for holding the opposition to as few points as possible, forcing as many turnovers as possible, and then also not being on the field a ton, given that their offense is just running down the clock. Indianapolis is a for sure lock-in team for me this upcoming season on defense. So for our second best team, another one of these logos that didn't really fit too well, but it is the Dallas Cowboys. So the Dallas Cowboys are going to be a tricky team. They are either going to do very well this season or they are going to fall flat on their face. I'm willing to bet on the first part of that, though, that they're definitely probably going to end up excelling. They have the 5th easiest schedule in the upcoming season, which, like I just mentioned about the Colts, that is a very important piece when you're talking about whether or not a defense can exceed or succeed with relative ease. Looking at the second bullet point, you have a ton of star power with Micah Parsons, Darius Smith, Trayvon Diggs. Their defense is looking very nice. And, you know, for good reason. I think that this is going to be one of those teams that kind of roll over that NFC East division. So looking at their division, you know, you have the Washington Commanders, you got the Philadelphia Eagles, and the New York Giants. So really the only thing that steps in their way, honestly, is probably going to be that New York Giants team. There's been a lot of hype around the Washington Commanders about being a good team now they got Carson Wentz. I don't buy it. Carson Wentz has always kind of been an average quarterback for me. Their defense does look good over in Washington, and you could argue the very same for Philadelphia going ahead and getting that Darius Slay. So I don't know. I just feel like the Dallas defense is just too good. They're historically in an easy conference, as I just said. They are going to be a main contender for the division, and that is probably one of the most important aspects here, is that whenever you have a defense that is on a team that is typically already not going to be a contender, there's going to be a lot of games where they lose, and when they lose, they give up more points than what they get than what they got. So you end up having a very negative based defense. So Dallas doesn't find themselves in that position. They're going to be winning a lot of games. The only downside is the games do tend to be pretty high scoring, and so Dallas is not really known for being in these 14 to 21 games. They're more known for like these 35 to 28, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be a lot of points given up, but honestly, Dallas is pretty good at getting a lot of takeaways. So they're probably going to end up scoring quite a bit on the defensive side of the ball. And then Tony Pollard being their return guy, who actually did have a return for a touchdown last season. I think it was like 100 yards. So not only are they going to be able to provide value on the defensive side, but also special teams as well. And then they forced the most turnovers last season. So I was completely right with what I said earlier. They take away the ball a ton. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they have Trayvon Diggs, and he is just amazing at takeaways, but he's not so great at coverage. He does a lot of suicide decisions, giving up the big play for the big play, if you will. And so I think that that's a big reason why they end up giving up so many points. But having a talent like Micah Parsons, who was probably the best rookie player in the entire NFL last season, he's only going to get better with age, and I'm really excited for what this Dallas team can do. And then so for our last defense here, I mean, a lot of people probably saw this one coming, but it is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are going to be the best defense in the NFL. There's really no question around it. They went ahead and they signed a tremendous talent, which we'll get to in a little bit later. But starting off here, they were the best overall defense last season, and I really don't see any reason why this should change. They're in a division that is historically not a high-scoring division. They have the 12th easiest schedule in the upcoming season, which, as I mentioned many times prior, this is a really important thing when you're talking about a defense. So as long as their offense is able to just pound the football into the end zone, the defense is literally just going to be playing prevent. They don't really have to do anything risky or whatever to try and force turnovers. They will get a lot of turnovers, but they won't be forcing it, which is very important. They allowed the fewest total yards last season. Just like think about that for a second. They finished as the best overall defense and they gave up the fewest yards. That is crazy. Giving up the fewest yards does not only tell you that this team does not give up a lot of points, but realistically, they're forcing a lot of punts. And so their offense is going to be doing better and giving a lot less pressure on the defensive side of the ball as well. They forced 30 turnovers last season, which is pretty crazy given that that is the same number as the New England Patriots. However, they were able to also give up the fewest yards. That's crazy. They gave up the fewest points allowed last season as well. So going ahead and recapping all of this, they have the 12th easiest schedule. They have given up the fewest yards, the fewest points, and they are tied for the most turnovers last season. This defense was outstanding last season, and there's really no reason for this to change. Their star talent down here on bullet point number 6 is probably the biggest reason as to why this team is going to be so good. You have Von Miller, you have Micah Poyer, you have Tre'Davious White, you got Tremaine Edmonds. I think it's Tremaine Edmonds. Shaq Lawson, Ed Oliver, Jordan Poyer. My bad. But this defense is littered with star power. This honestly is going to be a Super Bowl or bust type team. They have everything going for them on offense. They have everything going for them on defense. Realistically, I don't see a team being able to contend against Buffalo at all. So that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, if you like today's content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.